The greater set of questions and answers, unraveling the Four Noble Truths, a understanding the discourse on the Mahā Vedalla Sutta, MN 43. Introduction. My friends, fellow seekers of truth, today we gather not for a sermon, but for an exploration. We are going to sit at the feet of two masters of wisdom and listen to a conversation so profound, so precise, that it has been preserved for over 2,000 years. We will be eavesdropping on a dialogue that takes place in the cool shade of Jeta's Grove, near the ancient city of Savatthi. This discourse is the Mahā Vedalla Sutta, the greater set of questions and answers, the 43rd sutta in the Majjhima Nikāya, the Middle-Length Discourses of the Buddha. The setting is simple. The Blessed One, the Buddha, is staying there, but in this sutta, he remains silent. The teaching unfolds entirely between his two foremost disciples. On one side, we have the questioner, the Venerable Mahā. He is renowned for his analytical knowledge, his ability to dissect the Dhamma with incisive precision. On the other side is the responder, the Venerable Sariputta, the Buddha's right-hand disciple, the general of the Dhamma, declared by the Buddha himself as second only to him in wisdom. This is not a conversation between a master and a novice, but between two enlightened beings, a deep, unscripted conversation between two leading experts, deconstructing the very architecture of the mind. Their purpose is not to debate, but to clarify. They are polishing the mirror of the Dhamma so that we, who come after, might see our own minds more clearly. The text describes it as an intellectually refined dialogue. And at its very heart, from the first question to the last, the discourse is a gradual revelation of the one framework that the Buddha held most essential, the Four Noble Truths. As we journey through their words today, we will see how understanding consciousness, feeling, perception, and the nature of reality itself all circle back to this central truth. The reality of dukkha, its origin, its cessation, and the path. The sutta quietly asks us a timeless question. Have you begun the work of cultivating wisdom, not as an abstract ideal, but as a way of seeing your own experience more clearly? So let us begin and observe. Part 1. The foundation, wisdom, ignorance, and the Four Noble Truths. The sutta opens as Venerable Mahā approaches Venerable Sariputta in the late afternoon. After exchanging courtesies, he sits to one side and poses his first question. It is a question that cuts to the very core of our spiritual identity. Friend, one of poor discernment, one of poor discernment. Thus is it said. To what extent is one said to be one of poor discernment? Now, we might expect a complex answer involving ethics, meditation, or scriptural knowledge. But Sariputta's reply is startling in its simplicity and its depth. He says, one doesn't discern, one doesn't discern. Thus, friend, one is said to be one of poor discernment. And what doesn't one discern? One doesn't discern, this is stress. One doesn't discern, this is the origination of stress. One doesn't discern, this is the cessation of stress. One doesn't discern, this is the practice leading to the cessation of stress. With these words, Sariputta establishes the Four Noble Truths as the very metric of wisdom. A person of poor wisdom is not someone who fails an IQ test or cannot quote scriptures. A person of poor wisdom is one who is ignorant of the existential reality of their own suffering. They are out of touch with the way stress, dukkha, arises in their life, through attachment, aversion, and ignorance. They cannot see its cause, they cannot imagine its end, and they have no idea how to practice to bring about that end. Mahā, delighted, then asked the natural follow-up. Friend, discerning, thus is it said. To what extent is one said to be discerning? And Sariputta gives the mirror image reply, one discerns, one discerns. Thus, friend, one is said to be discerning. And what does one discern? One discerns, this is stress. One discerns, this is the origination of stress. One discerns, this is the cessation of stress. One discerns, this is the practice leading to the cessation of stress. Here, in the very first exchange, the frame is set. The entire conversation to follow is an unpacking of what it means to truly discern these truths. As a modern reflection notes, wisdom is not information accumulation. It is the capacity to see through the structures of suffering embedded in everyday life. It is existential, not ornamental. We are not here to collect ideas, but to see reality. Part 2. The Architects of Experience, Consciousness, Wisdom, and the Mind's Inner Workings. With this foundation laid, Mahā Thera begins to probe the tools of this discernment. He asks about consciousness, vijnana. Sariputta Thera explains that consciousness is the faculty of cognizing. It cognizes pleasure. It cognizes pain. It cognizes neither pain nor pleasure. It is the raw awareness of an experience. This leads to one of the most subtle and crucial points in the entire sutta. Mahā Thera asks, friend, discernment, and consciousness, are these qualities conjoined or disjoined? Is it possible, having separated them one from the other, to delineate the difference between them? This is like asking, can you separate the flame of a lamp from its light? Sariputta Thera answers, discernment and consciousness are conjoined, friend, not disjoined. It's not possible, having separated them one from the other, to delineate the difference between them. For what one discerns, that one cognizes. What one cognizes, that one discerns. In the moment of experience, they arise together. You cannot have pure, bare consciousness without some element of discernment, however dim, and you cannot have wisdom without consciousness. They are inseparable, like two sides of a single coin. This is a profound insight into the nature of the mind. It tells us that our conscious experience is not just raw data. It is always intertwined with a degree of knowing, of interpretation. As one scholar notes, these two arise together and cannot be separated in lived experience. They are intertwined like flame and light. But if they are inseparable, what is the difference? Mahā Thera presses further, and here Sariputta Thera provides the key that unlocks the entire path of practice. He says, discernment and consciousness, friend. Of these qualities that are conjoined, not disjoined, discernment is to be developed, consciousness is to be fully comprehended. Let the power of this sink in. The raw knowing, the consciousness. This is something we must understand thoroughly. We must see its nature, that it is impermanent, conditioned, and not self. We must comprehend it as a phenomenon, but wisdom, discernment, that is what we must cultivate. We must develop it, strengthen it, and turn it into a tool for liberation. An academic source from 1894 beautifully captured this functional distinction. Pariñāyam, to be fully understood, for consciousness, and bhave-tabha, to be developed, for wisdom. This is not abstract philosophy. It is a precise instruction manual for the mind. We observe consciousness to see its true nature. We actively cultivate wisdom to uproot defilements. The conversation then flows naturally into an examination of other interrelated mental faculties. Feeling, vedana, and perception, sanya. Feeling is the affective tone of an experience, pleasant, painful, or neutral. Perception is the act of recognition. It perceives blue, yellow, red, white. It labels and categorizes. Mahā Thera asks if these three, feeling, perception, and consciousness, are conjoined or disjoined. Again, Sariputta Thera explains they are deeply intertwined. For what one feels, that one perceives. What one perceives, that one cognizes. They are not separate entities, but different functions of the mind working in rapid, seamless coordination. A modern thesis on this sutta confirms that while they are named differently, they cannot be separated too. That is, when feelings acknowledge something, perception recognizes it, and when perception acknowledges something, consciousness recognizes it. This is the mind's operating system. A feeling arises. Perception immediately labels the object. Consciousness knows the whole event. And woven through all of this, like a thread through beads, is the potential for wisdom or ignorance. The architecture of our experience is built from these components. To understand the Four Noble Truths, we must understand this architecture. Why? Because dukkha is not an abstract concept. It is a lived reality constructed in this very mind-body complex. Part 3. The Path to Liberation. seeing, knowing, and the conditions for freedom. Having deconstructed the mind, Thera now turns to the tools that lead beyond it. He asks about the eye of discernment, the purified intellect consciousness that can know the formless meditative attainments, the spheres of infinite space, infinite consciousness, and nothingness. This leads to a question about the very purpose of wisdom. Thera's answer is a perfect encapsulation of the path. The purpose of discernment is direct knowledge. Its purpose is full comprehension. Its purpose is abandoning. Notice the three functions. First, direct knowledge, abhinya. This is not believing, not guessing, but knowing for oneself. Second, full comprehension, parinya. This is the deep, penetrative understanding that we discussed earlier. The full comprehension of consciousness. And third, abandoning, pahana. This is the result. When wisdom directly knows and fully comprehends the nature of something, like craving or ignorance, it is automatically abandoned. It falls away like a leaf from a tree. This is the engine of liberation. The dialogue then becomes intensely practical. Mahā asks, "Friend, how many conditions are there for the arising of right view?" Right view, samaditi, is the first factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. It is the starting point, the wisdom that sees things as they actually are. Without it, the other 7 factors cannot be properly developed. So this question is fundamental. How does this crucial wisdom arise in a person? Thera's answer is a timeless teaching on how we learn and grow. Friend, there are 2 conditions for the arising of right view, the voice of another and appropriate attention. Here is the path in a nutshell. The voice of another, paratogosa, is the wise guidance we receive from others. The Buddha, the noble ones, teachers, and even these very suttas. It is the map. It is the external condition, the compassionate intervention that points us in the right direction. But a map is useless if you cannot read it. That's where appropriate attention, yoniso manasikara, comes in. It is the internal skill of paying attention in a wise, systematic, and causal way. It is the ability to trace things back to their source, to see how suffering arises from its causes. As one reflection puts it, even the best map is useless if the traveler does not know how to read it. Liberation is a partnership between external guidance and internal effort. We need the teachings, and we need the personal discipline to apply them wisely to our own experience. Mahā Thera then asks how this right view is assisted to bring forth its highest fruits, the liberation of awareness and the liberation of discernment. Thera outlines 5 assisting factors: virtue, learning, discussion, tranquility, and insight. This is a complete and balanced path. It is not just about meditation, tranquility, and insight. It is also about ethical living, virtue, deep study of the Dhamma, learning, and clarifying one's understanding through dialogue and reflection, discussion. All 5 work together to bring right view to its full maturity. The conversation then shifts to the macro level, from the mind to the cosmos, or rather to the process of rebirth. They discuss the 3 kinds of becoming: sensual, form, and formless. And then comes the crucial question, and how is further becoming in the future brought about? Thera's answer ties everything back to the 4 noble truths. The delight, now here, now there, of beings hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. That's how further becoming in the future is brought about. There it is. The second noble truth, the origin of dukkha, is craving, tanha, and it is powered by ignorance, avidya. We crave for experiences, for existence itself, because we do not see the true nature of things. And this craving, this delight in becoming, propels us from one life to the next. And how is this process stopped? Through the fading of ignorance, the arising of clear knowing, and the cessation of craving. That's how further becoming in the future is not brought about. This is the third noble truth, cessation, nirodha. When ignorance fades, when true knowledge arises, craving ceases. The engine of rebirth is shut down. The path to this cessation is, of course, the Noble Eightfold Path, which they are in the very process of elucidating. Part 4, the meditative terrain, from the first jhana to the mystery of life. Mahā now guides the conversation into the territory of deep meditation, the very practice that leads to this direct knowledge. He asks about the first jhana, the first state of deep meditative absorption. Sariputta describes it as a state quite withdrawn from sensual pleasures, withdrawn from unskillful qualities, accompanied by rapture and pleasure born of seclusion, along with directed thought and evaluation. Mahā then asks about its factors. Sariputta explains that the first jhana is five-factored. It is endowed with directed thought, evaluation, rapture, pleasure, and singleness of mind. And simultaneously, it is defined by the abandoning of five hindrances: sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and anxiety, and uncertainty. This is a beautiful illustration of the principle of abandoning that Sariputta mentioned earlier. The meditative mind doesn't just gain positive qualities. It is a mind that has, through the power of wisdom and concentration, temporarily abandoned the very forces that cause dukkha. Finally, the dialogue reaches a point of profound philosophical and practical inquiry concerning the five physical senses and the mind. Mahā notes that each sense faculty, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, has its own separate range and domain. They don't interfere with each other. The eye sees forms, it doesn't hear sounds. But what is it that experiences all of their ranges? What is their common arbitrator? Sariputta answers, "Friend, these five faculties have the intellect as their common arbitrator. The intellect is what experiences all their ranges and domains. The mind, mano, is the sixth sense, the hub that unifies and interprets all sensory input." But then the questions go deeper. Mahā asks, "In dependence on what do these five faculties remain standing?" Sariputta replies, "These five faculties remain standing in dependence on vitality. And vitality remains standing in dependence on what? Vitality remains standing in dependence on heat. And heat remains standing in dependence on what? Heat remains standing in dependence on vitality." We have arrived at a paradox. Vitality, life force, depends on heat, bodily warmth, and heat depends on vitality. They are mutually supporting. Mahā, ever precise, points out this apparent circularity and asks for clarification. Sariputta, the master teacher, responds with a brilliant analogy. Suppose an oil lamp is burning. Its radiance is discerned in dependence on its flame, and its flame is discerned in dependence on its radiance. Just as the flame and its light are inseparable and codependent, so are vitality and heat. One does not exist before the other. They arise and cease together. This is a profound teaching on conditionality, paticcasamuppada. It shows that even the most fundamental aspects of our physical life, our warmth, our lifespan, are not fixed eternal entities. They are processes, flowing and changing in dependence on each other. An academic analysis notes that this analogy grounds life firmly in observable conditionality rather than metaphysical speculation. This insight leads Mahā to his next question, one that probes the very boundary between life and the deepest meditative states. He asks, are the vital forces in the phenomena that are felt one and the same? Or are the vital forces one thing and the phenomena that are felt another? Here, vital force is a translation of the Pali term ayu-sankara, which you will also see in the suttas as bhava-sankara or jivita-sankara. It is the life force, or the energy that keeps the body animate. The phenomena that are felt refers to feeling, vedana itself, the pleasant, painful, and neutral tones of experience. Sariputta's answer is definitive and opens a window into the most profound of all meditation states. He says, the vital forces are not the same things as the phenomena that are felt. For if the vital forces and the phenomena that are felt were the same things, a mendicant who had attained the cessation of perception and feeling would not emerge from it. This state, the cessation of perception and feeling, Nirodha Samapatti, is the pinnacle of meditative attainment in the Buddha's teaching. It is a state so deep that all mental activity, perception, feeling, and consciousness cease temporarily. It is accessible only to non-returners and arahants who are fully accomplished in all the absorptions. If vitality and feeling were one and the same, then when feeling ceased in this state, vitality would also have to cease, meaning the meditator would die. But they do not die. Because they are different things, the meditator can enter this state of complete mental stillness, with the life force still present, sustaining the body, and then emerge from it after a predetermined time. Mahā, building on this, then asks, how many things must this body lose before it lies abandoned, tossed aside like an insentient log? Sariputta's answer is clear and precise. This body must lose three things before it lies abandoned, tossed aside like an insentient log: vitality, warmth, and consciousness. This is the definition of death. The body becomes a corpse, an insentient log, when these three supporting factors, the life force, the metabolic heat, and the knowing faculty, depart. This leads to the most critical distinction of all. Mahā asks, what's the difference between someone who has passed away and a mendicant who has attained the cessation of perception and feeling? This is not an abstract question. It is said that even the Venerable Ananda, the Buddha's own attendant, was momentarily confused at the Buddha's passing, wondering if the Buddha had entered a deep meditation or had finally passed away. The distinction is vital. Sariputta answers with masterful clarity. When someone dies, their physical, verbal, and mental processes have ceased and stilled, their vitality is spent, their warmth is dissipated, and their faculties have disintegrated. When a mendicant has attained the cessation of perception and feeling, their physical, verbal, and mental processes have ceased and stilled, but their vitality is not spent, their warmth is not dissipated, and their faculties are very clear. That's the difference between someone who has passed away and a mendicant who has attained the cessation of perception and feeling. In death, the flame of life is out. The light, the warmth, the fuel, all are gone. In cessation, the flame of life is still present, but the mind's flickering has been utterly stilled. The meditator's faculties, their senses, remain extraordinarily clear and intact, ready to resume their function upon emerging. This is a living mastery of the mind, not an annihilation. The conversation now turns to the practicalities of these liberating states, exploring the specific conditions for entering and abiding in them. How many conditions are necessary to attain the neutral release of the heart? Sariputta replies, 4 conditions are necessary to attain the neutral release of the heart, with the giving up of pleasure and pain and the disappearance of former happiness and sadness. A mendicant enters and remains in the 4th absorption, without pleasure or pain, with pure equanimity and mindfulness. This is the 4th jhana, a state of profound stillness and purity, the ideal foundation for ultimate insight. Next, how many conditions are necessary to attain the signless release of the heart? 2 conditions are necessary to attain the signless release of the heart: not focusing on any signs and focusing on the signless. A sign, nimitta, is any object that triggers perception and thought. To enter the signless release, one must deliberately turn attention away from all such objects and focus instead on the theme of signlessness itself, the absence of all constructed features. But what about remaining in that state? Mahā asks, how many conditions are necessary to remain in the signless release of the heart? Sariputta's answer reveals a crucial detail about meditative mastery. 3 conditions are necessary to remain in the signless release of the heart: not focusing on any signs, focusing on the signless, and a previous determination. Before entering the meditation, one makes an inner resolve, a determination, to remain for a certain period of time. This shows that even in the deepest states, the will and intention of the meditator play a role, guiding the experience like a skilled pilot setting a course. And finally, on this topic, how many conditions are necessary to emerge from the signless release of the heart? 2 conditions are necessary to emerge from the signless release of the heart: focusing on all signs and not focusing on the signless. To emerge, the meditator intentionally turns the mind back toward the world of signs and phenomena, away from the theme of signlessness. Having meticulously analyzed these various liberating states, Mahā now poses a question that seeks to synthesize them all. It is the kind of question that reveals his own profound understanding and desire to see the whole picture. He asks, the limitless release of the heart, and the release of the heart through nothingness, and the release of the heart through emptiness, and the signless release of the heart, do these things differ in both meaning and phrasing, or do they mean the same thing and differ only in the phrasing? This is a masterful question. It asks whether these are four distinct practices or just four names for the same ultimate freedom. Sariputta's answer is a tour de force of Dhamma explanation. He says, there is a way in which these things differ in both meaning and phrasing, but there's also a way in which they mean the same thing and differ only in the phrasing. He then explains the way they differ. The limitless release of the heart refers to the four Brahma Viharas, or divine abodes. It is the practice of spreading love, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity to all beings without limit or boundaries. As the sutta describes, they spread a heart full of love to one direction, and to the second, and to the third, and to the fourth, abundant, expansive, limitless, free of enmity and ill will. The release of the heart through nothingness is a specific formless meditative attainment. It's described as going beyond the dimension of infinite consciousness and entering the dimension of nothingness, aware that there is nothing at all. The release of the heart through emptiness is a profound insight meditation. A mendicant goes to a wilderness, to the root of a tree or to an empty hut, and reflects, this is empty of a self or what belongs to a self. It is the direct perception of the selfless nature of all phenomena. The signless release of the heart is the meditative state we just discussed, where one, not focusing on any signs, enters and remains in the signless immersion of the heart. These, Sariputta explains, are the ways in which the terms differ in both meaning and phrasing. They refer to distinct practices and attainments, but then he reveals the way they mean the same thing. This is the culmination of the entire discourse. He shows how all these diverse paths converge on the single, ultimate goal. Greed, hate, and delusion are makers of limits. A mendicant who has ended the defilements has given these up. The unshakable release of the heart is said to be the best kind of limitless release of the heart. That unshakable release of the heart is empty of greed, hate, and delusion. Here, the limitless release is perfected. Its ultimate expression is not just a state of boundless, loving kindness, but the unshakable freedom of an arahant, a mind that is limitless because it is utterly free from the confines of greed, hate, and delusion. Next, greed is something, hate is something, and delusion is something. A mendicant who has ended the defilements has given these up. The unshakable release of the heart is said to be the best kind of release of the heart through nothingness. That unshakable release of the heart is empty of greed, hate, and delusion. The release through nothingness finds its ultimate meaning not in the perception of nothing at all, but in the state where greed, hate, and delusion have become nothing at all. They have been completely eradicated. And finally, greed, hate, and delusion are makers of signs. A mendicant who has ended the defilements has given these up. The unshakable release of the heart is said to be the best kind of signless release of the heart. That unshakable release of the heart is empty of greed, hate, and delusion. The signless release is perfected when the very makers of all signs, greed, hate, and delusion, are gone. The mind is signless because it no longer constructs signs based on these defilements. This, where Sariputta concludes, is the way in which they mean the same thing and differ only in the phrasing. All paths, all practices, all states of deep meditation ultimately point to one thing: the complete and total uprooting of greed, hatred, and delusion. The arahant's mind is the supreme limitless release, the supreme release through nothingness, and the supreme signless release. It is, in a word, free. This is what Venerable Sariputta said, and the text tells us that the Venerable Mahākotthita, satisfied, approved of what Sariputta had said. The dialogue ends not with a question, but with perfect understanding and agreement between two enlightened beings. Conclusion: the gradual revelation. And so the sutta concludes, leaving us with the image of the oil lamp, and now with the profound unity of all liberating paths. We began with a simple question about wisdom and ignorance, and we have journeyed through the intricate architecture of the mind, the conditions for liberation, the nature of rebirth, the factors of jhana, the mystery of life and death, and the very pinnacle of meditative and liberating experience. But in every step of this journey, we have never left the framework established in the very first exchange. The Mahā Vedalla Sutta is a gradual revelation of the Four Noble Truths. It shows us that the truth of suffering is found in every unexamined feeling and perception, that the truth of the origin is the craving and ignorance that fuel our delight in becoming, the very engine of our conscious experience, that the truth of cessation is the fading of that ignorance and the stilling of that craving made possible by the eye of discernment, a cessation perfectly realized in the Arahant, whose heart is unshakably free, limitless, empty of defilements, and signless. And that the truth of the path is the cultivation of that very discernment, assisted by virtue, learning, discussion, tranquility, and insight, leading us to a direct knowledge that abandons all defilements. This sutta is not a book to be worshipped, but a map to be walked. It is an invitation to look into our own minds, to see the interplay of feeling, perception, and consciousness, and to ask ourselves, are we just cognizing, or are we truly discerning? Are we lost in the flame, or are we understanding its light? May this discourse serve as the voice of another for you. May it inspire the appropriate attention within you, and may you, through your own practice, come to directly know, fully comprehend, and abandon that which keeps you bound, so that you may realize for yourself the supreme freedom that lies at the heart of the Buddha's message. Take up this path with resolve. Realize Nibbana, the ultimate freedom. The Dhamma is timeless, visible here and now to the wise. May the merit of this Dhamma offering help you to cultivate the wisdom and determination needed to fulfill the highest human potential. The complete cessation of suffering through the realization of Nibbana. May you be awakened. May you be free. May you realize the peace that is beyond all understanding. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.